This is Lydia Lunch, and you're listening to The Lydian Spin with Tim Dahl. Jerry Stahl, who's here with us tonight, restores my faith in contemporary writing. His memoir, Permanent Midnight, detailed one of the most harrowing and hilarious journeys into degeneracy and drug addiction that was ever published. He followed it with Perv, a love story, a belly-slapping good time at the expense, once again, of his own manhood, chronicling cringe-inducing pubescent sexual scenarios involving failed, fractured, and just plain fucked up romantic encounters. Plainclothes Naked came on its heels, a fat contemporary detective noir whose punchline features a purloined Polaroid of George W. Bush's nutsack. I have to say, it was brilliant. I, Fatty is probably one of my favorite books he wrote. It's a new take on the Fatty Arbuckle scandal. There was Painkillers, Bad Sex on Speed, Happy Mutant Baby Pills, a novel, The Heroin Chronicles, OG Dad. When I first met Jerry Stahl, and it's interesting because it was Karen Finley that said I should meet Jerry Stahl, and it was because of Jerry Stahl and Hubert Selby still being alive that I moved out to L.A. For the second time. Because I wanted to work with him, and Jerry and I did some touring together, and I worked with Hubert Selby, who was still alive. Jerry is one of the best live performers. He says things about men that only he would reveal. Most other men would be terrified, which I think causes them to be kind of hot and sexy. Anyway, we're here tonight with my favorite perv, Jerry Stahl.
Twilight of the Stooges. So it's 1980-something. I'm nowhere. Susie, this older white lady I buy cocaine from, tells me she'll give me a free gram if I help her do some. I say, sure, why not? She says, exactly. Then, before my eyes, she gets on her hands and knees on the cat pee marinated shag carpet. She raises the salmon nightie she lives in, exposing a pair of 63-year-old, weirdly hot, baby smooth ass cheeks, which she introduces as Heckle and Jekyll's albino cousins. Jiggling her cheeks the way bodybuilders will jiggle their pecs. Left, right, left. She makes them talk to each other. Heckle likes to get spanked, bad little crow. Jekyll, you're such a freak. After 15 minutes, or maybe a day, Susie pretends to get annoyed with her chatty buttocks. She tells them to stop as I zone in and out, grinning like I haven't seen Miss Chatty Cheeks 5,000 times already. I am simultaneously wondering how long I can go without asking, begging, stealing another hit, and obsessing on the name of the guy who did Topo Gigio on Ed Sullivan. Susie's TV is always on with the sound off. After a while, you begin to think the rays soak into your head and over the blood-brain barrier with the rest of the shit you're putting in there. Susie resembles Miss Hathaway, Mr. Drysdale's horsey secretary on the Beverly Hillbillies. If Miss Hathaway had been locked in a dark room and force-fed Kent's, cocaine, and gin for 27 years while bathed in color Sony light. She reaches back and hands me a straw, a regular sweetheart. Okay, soldier, pack some in there. In the straw? In my ass. Jesus, how dumb are you? Put some powder in the straw, put the straw in my ass and blow. I've done worse for less, I say with a shrug, trying to convey an emotion I do not even remotely feel. In fact, there is actual screaming in my head, a voice that sounds alarmingly like Jimmy Swaggart. More TV-adjacent damage. I might as well be in the box getting transmissions directly into my pineal gland. I am never not awake Sunday morning at 4 when Jimmy comes on in my neck of the world. Am I nervous or am I happy? Why are you staring? Fuck, helicopters. You either get why Elvis tinfoiled all his Helltail windows or you don't. Right before I angle toward the target, I start to feel chiggers under my skin, and I fight the urge to scratch myself bloody digging them out. This is when I hear Jimmy Swaggart start speaking directly to me. Hey, loser, you're about to blow drugs into the anus of a woman old enough to be your mother. You know what our Lord would say about that? Happily, I am so cocaine depleted, I instantly forget that I'm hearing voices and that I itch. You don't know you're having a whiteout until you come out of it. You just kind of blink too. I remember that I'm trying to keep my thumb pressed on one end of the straw while I slip the other end in Susie's pink O without spilling any Coke. Her sphincter, for reasons I can't fathom, makes me think of a dog toy. I hold my breath, mouth poised by the business end of the tube. I have a weird pain in my spleen, though I'm not sure where my spleen is. I just know it's unhealthy, and I should go to a dentist, too. I can only chew with the left corner of my mouth, and I've been shooting heroin for so long, my tongue tastes like a syringe. Never mind. When I say do it, Susie says, and launches into some kind of kundalini fire breathing that expands and puckers her chosen quote portal. For one bad moment, I am eyeball to eyeball with a jolly Ray Harryhausen cyclops who won't stop leering at me. Then I avert my gaze to take in the picture of Susie's dead B-celebrity husband on the wall, the Teddy Shrine. That's better. Susie met her late husband if she was a call girl. Many of her clients were half-washed-up New York stage actors. In a career lull, Teddy appeared in a number of Three Stooges vehicles, but not, as Susie would interject when she repeated the story, which she did no more than 20 times a night, not the good Three Stooges. Teddy made his Stooge debut in the heyday of Joe DeRita, the curly replacement nobody liked. Twilight of the Stooges, Susie would sigh. People even liked Shemp better than they liked DeRita.
This is Lydia Lunch, and you're listening to The Lydian Spin with Tim Dahl and Jerry Stahl. When I first met Jerry Stahl, I don't remember the year, do you, Jerry?
I have no fucking
Decades
memory
ago.
whatsoever.
Jerry had 7 unpublished books, which I couldn't even comprehend how a human being could be alive under the burden of that rejection, especially knowing what a great writer he was. I don't have 7 unpublished songs. It was horrifying to me, and actually it's one of the reasons that both Hubert Selby and Jerry Stahl were kind of my literary goalposts. Hubert Selby being someone that, his first book took 7 years to write, wrote it twice. One book took 6 months. His last book was like 16 years. He said it was like the ghost in the doorway.
Which book was it?
I think it was The Willow Tree. So the ghost in the doorway, he just couldn't write it. And I had met Jerry, Karen Finley said we should meet. Anytime I read anything by you, I could not understand why it wasn't a blockbuster or that you are kind of like me, a stand-up comedian. Or tragedian, if that's, or...
Well, when people like you like your work, you're fucked,
Roar.
So that's
Well, I'd love to fuck you, but I'd have to use somebody else's dick, Jerry, I have to say. I'm just sorry about it.
Well, you're really on fire.
Not really. I'm feeling a little chilly down below because there hasn't been any action there in a while, but if you care to warm me up, Jerry...
Well, no, last night there was some action down there.
Hey!
No, choking on ghosts.
I choked on ghosts, but if I wet myself, I don't consider that exactly action. Yes, I had to blow dry my crotch last night because I choked on ghosts, and that does have a rather...
It was during the podcast.
Well,
actually, with Ron Athan.
I don't know that term, choked on
It's
ghosts.
literally what it sounds like. Sometimes, it used to be the word house, home, or apartment would make me literally, gag. You hear my voice? The cat litter box sound? That's from choking on a ghost. So we were interviewing Ron Athan, and the minute he just said the word AIDS, I just started choking. I choked myself. It's like I'm almost choking myself to death. Sometimes when I enter a hotel room, not here because there's no soul in this building, it's like I'm choking on the misery, the desperation, the murder, the suicide, frustration, disappointment. Sometimes when I walk into my own house, the same thing happens. But Tim hasn't really heard it that. I usually don't do it in public.
No, I've heard it on the road a million times.
That's a great expression of choking on ghosts.
But I feel like I'm choking. The last time I went up to my friend Carla Boslick, but the minute I walked up to her, I started choking. I had to leave the room. I'm like, choking on your
What
ghost.
does it signify? Is it like
It's just
other spirits and energies and
I don't want to call it spirits. I don't want to even call
horror?
it former. I
What?
just want to
Okay.
call it. I want to call it a dystopian overhang that surrounds
overhang.
some people or rooms.
Is that the same as a front ass?
Is that this? I don't think so. Is it the same as ass to mouth? Well, it kind of is. It's like my mouth on the ass of ghosts. God, wasn't that a Talking Heads record? No, it was My Life in the Bush of Ghosts. I'm getting confused. We're talking with Jerry Stahl. This is the Lydian Spin with Tim
It's a
Dahl.
burden, though, when you have when you're that deeply affected by the presences in the history of
Well,
the place.
it's energy. It's like, when people want to talk about reincarnation, I don't like the term, but I do believe that our bloodline has a code that some people can dissect. It's like a computer code that most of us can't comprehend. So all of murder, all of history, all of life, love, death, and if only there was resurrection, there isn't, is in our bloodlines. So some people just have greater access to that. I feel that my bloodline is corrosive, and I'm constantly fighting against. I'm not going to say it's my reincarnation, it's the history of all of our bloodlines. So, yeah, I'm a bit sensitive sometimes.
What is your bloodline? Where do your people come
Sicilian
from?
and
Polish?
German.
Sicilian? Oh,
But
Sicilian and German.
But you say Polish, and Polish are some of my favorite writers, probably because my people have killed their people.
You're Russian descent, or
More or less.
More
yeah.
or less.
Russian, Polish, German.
Do you feel that your bloodline is corrosive, Jerry? I mean, do you feel that the pain you've had, self-inflicted and by others in this life, could possibly be, again, one of these overhangs of history that is bearing down on your shoulder, causing not only emotional, but whether you believe in psychic pain or not, but physical pain?
I think it's,
I
people
think
have
it
had it a
is.
lot worse than I have.
That's the way I feel also. But the thing is,
They
we
do
are
say, though,
contaminated
that
by nature.
generations after genocide, the descendants of people who've been through that kind of horror have that,
Inherited.
some kind of inherited torment. I think technically the term is they're not festive.
Well, we can be I'm very festive, but I'm also festering quite often. So this is the issue. I do think that, look, if we want to talk about trauma, which is what you write about a lot, which is what I write about, which is the people who I like to write about, is, trauma didn't just start with mom and dad. I mean, I realized that at 9, which is why I could start writing about them. It didn't just start with my family, my immediate nuclear family, that mini division of a fascist cult. But I realized at a very early age that it's like it didn't start here, and it's not the worst. So how far back can we go? And I don't know if we need to go that far
Well,
back.
we talked about it last night. Instincts. I mean, like primal fears to things like snakes and spiders. I mean, they say it's.
Well, which I have no primal
You
fear.
have no primal fears. Just some
Fear
direct. Yeah, you have no.
is
fear.
a man's
You have
best
no
friend,
fear.
according to
Yeah.
John Cale. But Jerry, fear?
Is John Cale a man's best friend?
He was pied in the face by one of my best bass
Well-
players, but that wasn't Tim Dahl. That was
Well,
George
no,
Scotty.
I saw him at breakfast in was it Melbourne a couple years ago?
John Cale.
Yeah, he was there. He was eating his crappy Australian breakfast.
All right, back
wasn't he?
to
Sorry,
back
yeah.
to fear, Jerry. Do you have it? Do you relate to it? Do you acknowledge it? Do you cause other people to fear you?
Well, you can't control that. I think most people have a sort of boomeranging fear where they project their own weirdness onto other people, and then they're terrified by what they encounter.
Projection.
Don't you think?
Well, I don't know, because I've felt fear for 20 seconds in my life. So I'm not an expert. There's a
Well,
lot.
around second 16, what was going through your mind?
I better get that Mr. Rigid buck knife, which was about that big, off my throat.
Now, just out of curiosity, was that a nickname for your buck knife, or was that the brand, Mr. Rigid?
It was called Rigid. I termed him Mr. Rigid.
Mr.
And
Rigid.
yes, it was in the hand of one of my lovers, who, by the way, is still one of my favorite people.
And you sent him a photograph of it recently.
Well, because he happened to just call me out of the blue. I hadn't spoken to him in years, and I had...
Is that the fellow we know who's doing a little bit of time?
No.
No.
I had picked up Mr. Rigid, which was kind of, as he put it, R-A-R-E baby.
Can I just say that one of the great first sentences is, I have picked up Mr. Rigid. I think down the road when you're looking to start another...
well, we can edit it.
Yeah.
So it starts
Matter.
that way.
I mean,
No, I mean another book or poem or song.
I've only felt fear for 20 seconds in my life. That
Well, all
was...
kidding aside, what was going on?
I was at the Lost Heads Ranch. Yes, there is a Lost Heads Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
I was with an ex-lover.
Okay.
We drove up there. He must have known it because I didn't. We got out of the car. We had just finished filming Fingered, actually. The Richard Kern film. And we got out of the car. It was a bright, sunny California day. And suddenly he just threw me to the ground, knelt on top of me, and I heard the click.
This is the ex?
Well, we still love him. So
Well, okay. Well,
heard the click.
Yeah.
And out comes Mr. Rigid. And he held it to my throat, and I just said, I mean, here I am at the Lost Heads Ranch, about ready to lose my head. And I'm like, I fucking love you. Which is all he wanted to hear, I love you. And the minute I said that, a very slight rain, I mean, it was a sunny day. It was, what is it called, a sun shower. I didn't see any rainbows. Came down upon my face, and after hearing those words that all men, for some reason, have a need to hear, and so do most women, but however,
Really?
we rarely do hear it, he jumped up, and that was it. I think that was, I had a shotgun held to my head. I wasn't frightened before. That was,
Was the knife to your throat?
the knife to my throat.
So you didn't fight. You used words to get out of it.
Why would I fight?
You psyched him out.
There was no reason to fight. Plus, you don't kill the killer.
Was this like
he didn't know I was from fear because, the only way that a predator can prey upon a victim, which is by them sensing your fear. So, that was a good lesson because I just deleted that emotion like I deleted many others. There's a lot of emotions I've never experienced. I have to look up articles. Shame, never felt it. Embarrassment, never felt it. Jealousy, once, delete. Self-doubt, self-loathing. So basically most of the things you write about. That's why I enjoy your writing so much and your performance.
Everybody's good at something. Did you teach yourself not to have that? Did
No.
you come from a family who were shameful,
No.
weirded out, self-contemptuous
No.
people? Well, that's good.
No, it came because of the fact that, by 6, I was always already murderous. Well, I'd already murdered my brother in the womb. I was already murderous.
Really? You did an Elvis thing?
I don't think Elvis murdered his brother unless he ate him.
Well,
I think I actually had to murder my twin brother because if he would have lived and I wouldn't, or if I would have been a man, that would have just been another Otis tool that we didn't need.
When did your mom reveal to you that you had a twin?
Well, I knew I had a twin, but when I told her at 9 I knew it was a boy and I killed him, she just broke down in tears.
you mean she had never told you? And
I
you
knew I
just-
had a twin and was
you
dead.
just
She
knew.
didn't tell me I was a natural-born killer. I figured that out. No,
You can't just march this shit out and drop it. How did you... you killed your brother in the womb? Did you strangle him? How did you do it?
I sucked the life out of him.
Nice.
No, it's funny because I usually breathe life into other people.
You do?
Don't you think?
You're a giver.
I am. Until they bloat up on their own narcissism and explode or go to
Float
prison.
away. Yeah.
Right. So, no, since I started off with just anger and hatred, then I decided to flatline to get rid of that. Then I was able to build up emotion.
It's
And I
impressive
think-
you had that much control over your emotions.
Well, look, victims behave in various ways. I never turned the knife inward over
At
my
what point
trauma.
were you were... I know your story pretty well, but when did you first get that word victim in your head?
I never really felt I was a victim. I just felt shit happened to me that I didn't want to repeat. But how long does that take to get over?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
I've read about it. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. Don't be shy.
It's amazing to me that you've ended up the loving, sunshine and butterflies person you are, considering your experience.
Tim Dolan, you want to step in there?
Well, I've only known her to be loving and giving. I've never been threatened, treated poorly. Only been treated.
I'm a
treated me
cheerleader.
great
I was a cheerleader, and I'm still a cheerleader for other people. It's like,
Whoa,
look,
back up. You were a cheerleader?
Can't you see me with pom-poms? I was also a gymnast.
It's hard not seeing you with pom-poms.
How did you think I got these thighs, honey? When was the last time
I
you
asked
felt them?
myself, and then I just walked away from the
Well,
question.
you know what? I don't think you really gave him a good squeeze in quite a while, if ever. And I think maybe after this we should.
Oh, boy.
Oh, here we go.
Look, the thought of him squeezing my thighs just hurt his hand. Jesus Christ. Anyway, I'm very unusual in the terrain of, of early trauma devastation because I just never turned the knife inward. And I knew mine was not the worst case. And everything my father may have stolen from me with his inability to keep his hands to himself
Yeah.
was he gave me in spades the benefit of his personality, which was charisma, the body of a bull, never getting sick. Everyone liked him, various aliases. He was a con man. He was a door-to-door salesman. I'm a city saleswoman. He just didn't give a shit. And that was a problem because at one point, if women would be in the room and he didn't give a shit, his hands just had a mind of their own. Well, some things you gotta overlook. I have to sit in my hands all the time, thanks, Dad.
So do you think, like Hemingway was right, the greatest gift an artist can have is an unhappy childhood?
I know very few artists that didn't have an unhappy childhood, so I can't speak for the others.
Do you
but-
think he's right on that one?
Fuck yeah, I think
do?
so. Sure. Yeah, you're forever writing or painting or playing music out of whatever hell you were trying to crawl
Now, not
out of.
everybody creates out of that desperation, but most of the people that I respect or that I listen to, read, watch, perform with.
That's true.
And and then there's a variety of depth. To me, trauma is trauma, pain is pain. It doesn't matter how deep or how minor it is. If you're in pain, you're in pain. And we don't need to talk about physical pain because you're in it right now, and I've been in it most of my life, and that is really often a manifestation. Animals, sorry to jump ahead. Animals, when they encounter a predator, they play possum, and as soon as the predator's gone, they have a full-body orgasm and shake it off.
Whoa.
But which animals specifically?
All
Back
animals.
up.
Hang
Are
on.
you saying the possums have orgasms when the predator
They have
goes
a
away?
full body.
Is that what's happening?
Yes, they have a full body.
A posgasm. I never knew that.
They have a full body shakeout.
Full body shakeout.
This is why we become sex addicts. Hello. Because we never were able
You're
to
opening doors. I
shake
didn't know
off that original trauma.
You mean all the mommy cuddling?
All of that crap. You mean the mommy non-cuddling. You mean the
either
fact that
way,
mommy
yeah.
didn't cuddle you in the right way and that daddy liked to cuddle me too much. So if I feel that people become sex addicts, speaking from experience, because if we would have been able, when at 3, how are we going to know this, to have a shake-off of the trauma, but because we lost that animal brain, then we are forever looking for what's going to shake that trauma out of us, and hence we become, as the Buzzcocks once said, orgasm addicts. We're always at it. I don't know, it makes sense to me.
Did you know that before about shaking?
I've
I've never heard of the shakeout.
I've never heard of that one. I've never heard of that one.
That's
good. I don't want to question this about all animals. Well, I want to ask both of you because both of you work for. Well, you work for Hustler. You've written for Hustler, right?
I wouldn't say I would have loved to have worked for Larry Flynt. He's the only man I ever voted for. But no, they published some.
Oh, they
things.
published it. Okay, because I
didn't work for him. I wish I could have. I wish I could have a job.
When you worked very temporarily for Hustler, were you working directly with Larry Flynt, or was it?
I worked under him. I only met him a couple times.
Oh, okay,
It was right when he was being shot. I mean, he was not right when he was being shot. He got shot while I was there. I was in Philadelphia, in Columbus.
Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, my job was to. People from the Midwest would send in like genitally shaped vegetables, and I would write the gag lines.
Oh.
It was a highbrow gig. I was the humor editor.
Great gig.
I have to say, one of my favorite covers ever was, and I know this might sound sexist, but the woman in a meat grinder.
Well, that's my friend. You should meet my friend who's coming out here, Steve Sadian. That's who I did my films with.
That was an amazing
then.
cover because I think it was more of an indictment of how people
No, it was.
see
Of
women.
course
It
it was,
wasn't.
yeah.
And one thing I loved about Larry Flynt is he really did fight against censorship. I mean, and he took a bullet for it.
I mean, there was others in San Diego, the ones that got based during the whole obscenity law trials in '71. Was it Hamlin? Is that what they were?
Was this for porno though? Or
No, it was just before that. It was they were distributing also literature, Tribe of Cancer, Tribe of Capricorn, and pornography.
okay.
Oh, you mean like Maurice Gerodius, the Olympia Press guy? Who
That's what
published
I'm thinking. I'm thinking of Olympia Press and Grove Press and Barney Rossett, who published my first book. But Barney Rossett, who I met, who was one of the defenders.
I didn't know. That's pretty fucking impressive. He published your first book?
He published my book, Adulterers Anonymous, my book of bad poems.
That's some stellar company you're in.
Well, I mean, he was my hero.
Of course,
because I read all those books.
A lot of people don't know. I mean, can you explain for people listening who don't know who he is?
Well, I mean, Barney Rossett, Grove Press and the Olympia Reader. I mean, he stood up against censorship and stood up for Henry Miller and Hubert Selby and Desaad, and actually Grove Press published and thank you very much for the edition you gave me, the best translations of Marquis de Sade, whose birthday I'm born on, and whose my last album called Marquesa was The Philosophy of de Sade. This was my hero, and I met him, I guess it was in my early 20s, and brought this book of poetry, and he published it. So my hero
that is amazing.
My book. Yes.
Just a fun fact about the Marquis de Sade. There was a great biography of him, which included his #1 favorite sexual activity.
Which was?
Smelling prostitutes' farts.
I think there was somebody in my band that had a similar fetish, but I can't name names.
Tim, you're blushing.
Well,
No,
I mean, you'd have to dig much weirder than that to get to
I don't judge. I just thought it was kind of that not letting a working woman bathe, so to speak, for like 100 days and then drink in the bathroom.
That was Benjamin Franklin's.
Franklin's too?
Well, his love letters.
Must have been a French thing.
Well, he had all these like women like in France, and he'd write these letters and be like, "I'm coming. Make sure you don't bathe for 3 or 4 weeks. I really want to smell it." And yeah, he was really into odor. He was.
Oh, it's like James Joyce. He wrote those love letters to Nora about the turd sticking out of her ass like a fresh cigar.
So, how's your sense of smell, Jerry? How's your sense?
I
of
haven't
smell?
had a sense of smell for years. It
So,
got burned out early.
So then you don't really care if a woman bathes or not.
I wouldn't know. What do I know? I just look at the fleas circling their head, and I either back off or come closer, depending.
So all right.
Is that true that you have no sense of smell? Or
Absolutely not true at all.
I was going to run with that.
Run.
Well, Stevie Wonder doesn't have a sense of. Not only is he blind, he doesn't have a sense of smell, which is basically a sense of taste. I mean, the sense of taste is very little is actually the tongue, so it's mostly the nose.
He did.
Wow. He was in a car accident. and he lost his sense of smell like in the mid '80s. I mean, he wasn't driving, of course.
Oh,
At least I hope he
mean
wasn't.
he was already blind, and
He's already
years
blind.
Later,
They're like, hey,
lost-
we're going to take away another sense.
that's a
It must make it
Yeah.
so much easier to have sex with other people.
Well, there you go.
You know, the engineer. You keep a very deadpan face. Yes, considering what we're.
I'm talking about Simon Slater, the
inflicted on you.
engineer, producer.
I'm surprised you're paying attention.
You've successfully avoided prison in spite of your many crimes, which we do not. You illustrate them quite well in your many books. You just
my
were writing
crimes are pretty feeble. You know, I would.
the ones you admit to,
Yeah.
I guess. Okay, well. You recently wrote or were working on Escape from Dannemora.
Yeah, I was a hired gun on that. The two great writers, Michael Tolkien and Brett Johnson, came up with it, and then I was brought in to do an episode or part of another episode.
But you've written for TV before, quite successful. I mean, that's how
But
you
those
basically.
guys were great. I mean, mostly it was.
When I'm going to talk about how great you are. I mean, you
Yeah.
did write one of the most watched episodes of CSI, for
CSI,
instance,
yeah.
right?
Wow,
I mean,
we're going to the
That
way
is
back.
nothing to be
No, listen,
snorkeled at.
no.
I mean, that's pretty amazing. Now, excuse me.
I don't remember which one it was.
Did
to tell you
you
the truth.
did you actually name one character after me in one of the? Because there was those episodes about that woman that was like after Grisham, who was like a dominatrix, or there
Lady
was
Heather,
Lydia.
yeah,
But then there was
actually-
somebody named Lydia in there.
You know what? If I had a memory, I would agree. But I might have named.
I'm just
I
asking.
try only name characters after people who I don't know.
So, but I mean, your first success was writing for TV.
Not really.
What was your first success? Do you feel you've reached it yet?
The Pushcart Prize, that's a pretty big
Yeah, I
success.
stumbled. The interesting thing about that prize was it was rejected by Hustler. That story. It was about a. It's so long ago. It was about the bicentennial, and it was about a guy who thought his penis was turning into George Washington. So
I remember that tale.
Yeah, highbrow. It's a literary show, right?
So, all right, let's go back to your pre-TV career. So before.
No, I had
Need I
had
say-
no success.
Need I say
Well, Hustler for a second.
Moonlighting
I was
and
a
Elf?
mag- I was
I
a
don't want to
magaz-
bring that up, but
Yeah, but I didn't-
before
I
writing
mean-
for, how did you even start? How did you even get invited to write for TV?
I slept my way to the middle. I married a what they used to call, and no longer do. They used to call them D-girls, development person,
Right.
who needed a green card. Lovely woman who needed to pay somebody $3,000 so that she could be in the country and work. And she showed somebody a short story I had in Playboy, the guy who ended up being the Alf guy. But I only wrote one episode that was completely
okay. Well,
rewritten.
that really sticks
but
to you
because
like
of the movie, I
bad
know,
glue.
right? It's
That's
going to be on
really-
my tombstone.
Well, it's not as bad as Max Wright and his controversies. The guy who played the father, Willie Tanner.
well, that's a little. Yeah, he had that was rough sledding.
Yeah,
I think he had a little issue with.
a lot of issues.
Yeah, some pedophilia.
So I
things.
mean, okay, so you slept your way to the middle, writing for TV. I mean,
But it was just I didn't really do any writing. I didn't even know how to do the margins, man. I never had an office. It was. I'll tell you what happened was in Permanent Midnight, the book that ended up looking like a large part because this is a long, but I'll compact the story. I didn't have a computer. So
Well, back in those days, neither
some
did I.
people were just starting to. So what I thought somebody gave me a computer was a knockoff Apple. So what I thought was like a 500-600 page book wasn't really double spaced. It was like 1.5 space. So it was really like maybe 1,500 pages.
Oh
It was-
my gosh.
and the editor just like said, "What the fuck?" And they cut out all this shit about living in MacArthur Park and doing all these fucked up crimes and
So
B&Es
Permanent
and all that
Midnight
stuff.
Part 2 or part one and a
yeah.
half.
Part nothing. So as a result, it looked like I was this yuppie gone bad. When in fact, that was like 2% of my life was writing for TV. But because in the movie, Ben notably
Right.
hallucinated
Ben Stiller.
Ben Stiller hallucinated a puppet coming after him in the toilet.
Oh.
Alf and I became forever linked. So
hideous.
that's
But
okay.
anyway, but then you still got involved in writing for TV, and it must be kind of soul killing to do that because you're not just writing; you're writing with 8 other people, aren't you?
I
What's
used to think it was soul killing, but now I love it. I mean, I worked on
Tell
Mark
us the-
Maron's show, and
Tell
it's
us the procedure. You're writing for TV or somebody
you know
else.
what the
What's
procedure is. You're paid to sit in a. I mean, I've only been on 2 shows where there was actually a bunch of people.
Okay.
Maron and this show, Dannemora.
Okay.
Unless I'm forgetting one, because CSI and shit, I just visited. I was a consultant.
That's great.
And Dannemora, I just visited. But Maron, you're in a room with it's like being in a band. You're just stuck with somebody for like 5.
So
all
Mark
fucking
Maron
day.
needs 5 people to write his show.
Well, breaking stories is hard. You know, like coming
Listening
out
to
with
Mark Maron is hard, but anyway.
Well, I love him.
say
He's
it.
one of my best friends.
I know
But I
you
know
love
you're a podcaster, so you.
No, I'm not. Absolutely not. And his is not the one I would listen to. But then again, he didn't want me on his podcast either, so that's fine. I did like his TV show. Did you write for his TV show?
For 2 years, yeah. Last 2
Well, that was
seasons.
good.
Yeah.
I did like the TV show.
Yeah, he's a funny guy.
He's a funny guy.
And he went some very dark, weird places.
He did, and he's come out the other side.
But anyway, you just sit around. Basically, you write for about 5% of the day. And
Right.
The other 20% is ordering lunch. 20 more % is eating lunch.
it sounds like a
And
great
the rest of
gig.
it is just shooting the shit.
Sounds like a
the
great
best.
gig.
It's the best. And
So
I
now
avoided it.
you want
I
more.
avoided it my whole life because I thought I got to
now-
sit in a room and suffer and write novels, you know,
But right.
for my audience.
There's nothing
It's
more torturous than writing a book.
a little rough, but, you know, on the other hand, it's not like working in a fucking factory, you know. It's not like a real job.
Well, you're in an insane
Factory of
asylum. You're in an
hell,
insane
yes.
asylum of your own making, and you're trying to
On a
write
good
the
day,
page
yeah,
that's going to get you
sure.
out of it.
Yeah, that's right.
People have no idea what writing entails. No, I only know every writer has their own.
But I don't
technique.
complain about writing because I've had real jobs and those blow.
Yeah, of course
So,
they do.
you
But
know.
no, I don't give a shit about what
Yeah.
blows in the real world. I'm talking about the inner workings
inner
of
workings.
somebody that is onanistically sitting in a room with their own insanity, trying to write
Onanistically.
their way out. Which is what writers do. You are trying to write your way out of the next coming catastrophe or insanity, or you're trying to document which has already been a catastrophe to try to get yourself to the next place in it. Don't look at me confused. You know exactly what I'm fucking talking about.
I think you're giving me too much credit.
I know
man.
I'm not. Well, what I want to bring this up to is, for instance, I don't know how or when, but I'm a very different style of writer, and I write very differently. Than everybody
You don't
has.
rewrite, right? You just bang
No,
it
I
out.
don't. I
Yeah.
don't rewrite.
See, I'm like the Hubert Selby school, which is the first draft is the party, second draft you're cleaning up, and the rest of the time you're still fucking trying to get it right.
And also, you write outlines for books.
I never
Do you-
outlined
you
a book
did-
in my
you-
life.
Okay,
I couldn't follow a plot from here to the fucking door.
okay, that's because some writers will do a 60-page outline. I'm like, there's the book.
Like
what are you
Elroy.
doing?
Elroy famously will write like a
Chris
200-page
Campion.
outline for a 250-page book. No, the
I don't
best
get
description
that.
to me is the Norman Mailer thing, like writing a novel is like driving a car at night. You know, you can see 20 feet ahead in your headlight, and you get there and you can see the next 20 feet. You know, and it's kind of like that.
I never wrote a novel. I wrote a memoir. I mean, because I
I just happened to be dipping into Paradoxy when I was moving. By the way, I was looking at it again. It's really fucking holds up.
I'm reading from it tonight.
It's really
Anyway,
strong. I
thank
love
you very
that book.
much.
Really great.
I really appreciate that, and thank you for. Thank
Well,
you for
I hadn't
working
looked
with
at it in a while, so it's just like,
Well,
oh my god, this is fucking great.
Well, there'll be more of that anyway for you later tonight. I don't write novels. It's a memoir, and the only since I don't even read novels. I read very few novels. I just
What do you read anything?
I mean, I read novels when I was younger. I mean, I read a lot of fiction.
You
and
like
then I
those
just-
Polish writers, you said?
Yes, but now I just don't have time to read fiction. I
understand.
want fiction that is really more reality based.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I mean, you stretch the. I mean, when I'm writing Paradox, pretty much that's 99% yes, it happened. But the way that I had to convince
Really, you were
myself,
kind of writing that in real time? You mean?
the way that I convinced myself to write that book,
Mm-hmm.
because somebody had been bugging me for a while. So I said, if you give me a certain amount of money so I can have the time to write, I'll
That
write
helps.
something.
Do you have a deadline and shit?
No, but this is how I did it. And then I want to know more about how you do it. So I wrote the last chapter first, which is about having to clean out and detox
Mm-hmm.
from yourself and reprogram yourself. And when gluttony fails, you better go back to the most simple thing. You better learn to appreciate.
When gluttony fails? That's a good
Doesn't it
one.
always? And so I wrote that because I was already in the place of the last chapter. So since I don't know how to write a novel, I mean, I write for spoken word or lyrics. That's a very condensed format, and it's conversational. I just thought of each chapter like, what is a postcard? What is the postcard depiction of things that really impacted you? Fill in the back of it. Mm-hmm. And I would write every day from 6 to 9 a.m. One sentence, 100 pages, didn't matter. But I wrote it in 3 months.
But you got your ass in the chair.
And
every day.
I wrote it on a typewriter, by the way, and I already had a computer. It had to be written on a typewriter.
I totally understand. Yeah.
So now, you've published how many books? 12?
Nine.
9?
Nine.
How many are sitting under your bed? Waiting to be
many?
published.
Oh no. Well, you talked about those 7 that I originally way back when. The first chapters of those would be published like in some literary magazine, or
Right.
I
So
published
they're
a
not
bunch of them in
wasted,
Playboy,
right.
and the rest of them I wish I had saved. But yeah, I don't know where the fuck they
So,
are.
I mean, what was your most difficult book to write? The next one?
Yeah, exactly. The one I'm working on now. Yeah, I mean, the only thing harder than writing is not writing. You know, I try to arrange life to be so fucking brutal that the only salvation is writing, because that becomes relief.
What is your process?
It sounds very dramatic.
No, but what is your? I mean, okay, say, all right, you have to write, otherwise.
You know how hamsters, you know, if they don't chew on something, their teeth will grow through their bottom jaw and they'll fucking die. You know, it's kind of like that.
Does every book have its own procedural method?
Yeah, I've never figured out a method. I wish I had.
So,
I wish I was one of those.
Fatty.
Like Magritte, you know, not Magritte, but Simenon, you know, the French writer. He's written a million mysteries. He finishes one and
I have no idea how that's done.
He'll put a page in to start page one of the next one.
No, Fatty, which is one of my favorite books.
Fatty was the easiest one to write because the plot was already there.
Exactly, and you're delving into the history of somebody else the same way that you did with the Hemingway thing.
Yeah.
Is that easier for you to go into like?
Absolutely easier
because I mean all the rest of the stuff is basically dredging through the.
Well, I don't know if easy is the right word, but you know, you kind of knew how it was going to end beforehand,
right.
You know. And
what about a living character? With writing about Mark, I mean, he didn't invent that. I mean, writing about basically a character you didn't come up with, versus.
You mean in a TV show?
Yeah,
you talk about Mark. You mean?
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole different process.
Yeah.
But Fatty was.
Fatty, which is about Fatty Arbuckle.
But ultimately. You know, originally that was going to be a movie a million years ago, Philip Seymour Hoffman was going to do it, and what he said was really kind of like rocked me back. You know, he said, "Well, come on, man. You know, this is just a more honest memoir than Permanent Midnight. You know, except you made yourself fat instead of a junkie." It was like, holy fucking shit. He also had the brilliant idea to make the main character a fat suit.
Nice.
Because at one point, Fatty Roscoe, give him respect, had to kick heroin and do a publicity tour at the same time on these trains that had no air conditioning. So he had to wear a fat suit in like 95-degree Midwest mosquito-eating hell weather. And Phil had this idea to make the fat suit a character talking to him.
That would have been like a ventriloquist dummy talking to
the
the...
better, because it was a fat suit.
Is there a chance it could still be made into a movie? Or
no, it's owned by...
Johnny Depp?
You're way ahead of me, yeah. So he will...
Yeah, he's a bit of a culture vulture.
He's getting a little big too, right?
What?
Johnny Depp.
Wow, aren't you the catty little guy? Jesus, wow.
I'm not going to talk about Johnny Depp's appearance. I mean, he hasn't attracted me for 25
you know what?
years.
He paid me. He owns it. What are you going to do? That's life.
Well, you can't call Johnny because he won't call you back, I guess. So is there any other historical figure that you'd like to write about? Like, is there anybody on your, some people have books they want to read, records they want to listen to, movies they want to see. Is there any character you want to write about?
Well, since you mentioned it, I mean, I wouldn't mind doing stepping in and doing the Lydia story. But,
excuse me, I already wrote my own story, Jerry.
That's the problem.
What are you going to tell? What are you going to tell them that I already haven't told about myself? You have some secret understanding.
No, it'd be
about me?
complete fabrication. Probably about
so you're going to
your charitable work with children. You know,
you love to lie. You know what? It's not going to happen. Other than me, any other obsessions that you harbor?
I had the idea once of inventing the guy. There was a guy who accidentally invented ether.
That sounds like a great story.
And
I've heard this story.
There's a great.
Amazing.
I don't know it very well, and I'm not going to tramp on my own dick trying to describe it. But it was just
sounds great.
German or Swiss?
I can't remember. It was like sort of like that Albert Hoffman story
Yeah,
where he
yeah.
accidentally
Like, whoa, what happened? Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm on my bicycle
Yeah.
and like dragons are coming out of my nose. You know, that guy.
Were you a big? Did you ever do acid?
I did a ton of acid.
Are you still doing acid?
I am not doing acid.
Do you feel
I don't
affected
think
by
that
the
would-
acid you did?
I'm sorry? What?
Roar.
It's just those tracers when you move your hand.
You
I did a
moved
lot.
my hand, you just saw it.
I did mescaline and acid before I was ever drunk, like when I was about 13 or 14.
me
That's
too.
the thing.
So when
My-
I was
I had
the
a.
same,
Did you just say?
No, my cousin, she was the same.
I had an older sister who I was in Berkeley.
mescaline
and
at
it was,
12.
Yeah, exactly.
It was
It
great.
mescaline.
It was great.
It was intense. Yeah.
Do you
It's
think
up and
that?
downhill from there.
Were you? Was it pleasant? Did you get scared, or did you enjoy it, or?
I was such a cornball square kid that I remember like just seeing buses careening out of the sky and then saying to myself, "Is this going to affect my grades?" I mean, that's how fucking.
So you were fighting it, basically.
I was a little nervous because happiness and pleasure were not my nature, so it scared me a
So
little bit.
acid and mescaline made you happy.
Except for the really horrible trips. Sorry. I was
What
once.
would you say the percentage of horrible trips was? 20%?
I'd say about 50-50. I mean, I
Whoa.
remember one, I might still be there.
And you did that much.
I was in,
it was a flip of the coin.
the worst place was in New York City. I was in a bathroom stall at the Museum of Modern Art for like 8 hours. I just couldn't get out. I could
Were you
not.
looking at yourself, or you locked
I wasn't
in the stall?
wasn't looking at myself.
Stall
I
was
like,
locked in the stall.
Oh, look at you. See, that's why you're a great writer. You make the unexpected.
Oh,
the
please. You
unexpected
set me
comments.
up.
Yeah, right.
go.
Didn't see that coming. Never
Yeah,
heard that
come on,
before.
baby.
Yeah.
Stall with
all right.
doll, stall locked in a stall. This is the
Wow.
story of our lives. I'd love to tell you a bathroom stall story about me, but it'd be too rude for
look at it.
that's all right.
Anyway, so yeah, no, I just couldn't
Wide
figure
stance.
out. I couldn't figure out the lock.
8 hours.
And
8
you,
hours.
And you were too horrified to shimmy under the, maybe too tall to shimmy
and
under.
I don't
Security
think it
never showed
I don't
up?
think it occurred to me.
Security never showed up.
You know, they came by. There were legs under there. I don't think they kept tabs. It was before security cameras.
Is it?
I might still be there, and this was all just a grim hallucination.
I believe in the holographic universe. I mean, alternative
do?
realities, and I mean, I don't know if this is real or not. It doesn't matter. But so after these great acid experiments,
Many years ago, yeah.
then you just decided you had to do something else.
Do
How
something
long was
better.
it? How long was it before you then got into other drugs?
Oh, that. Yeah, I didn't really get into smack too much till I was a late bloomer till my like 30s.
Did
when
you
I
just
was
go
out
from
here.
acid to smack?
No, there was some in between,
What?
action.
Pills?
You know, weed, speed,
Oh,
coke,
weed, speed, okay.
the usual. You know, all the garden variety bullshit that people do.
I don't know. I mean, myself, I was really into the pills they made in the 70s. Second L's, two
Quaaludes?
Quaaludes.
Mandarax.
Well, Mandarax
Beauties.
was just English fucking
Quaaludes.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I wish they still made those drugs. Actually, that's how
I'm
I
sure they
supported.
do.
Were you Mexico?
How I supported myself for quite a while in New York was selling black beauties in a small park to old men. Yeah, I don't know, whatever.
Was that your target audience?
Well,
was
there
old
used to
men?
be a
Well, I guess when
clinic-
you're that young, everybody's an old man, right?
Lewd
I
behavior.
was an old man. They recognized a familiar. I would go to, there was a clinic on 2nd Avenue near Sarah Meg's place. You could just go in and go, I can't sleep. I need some second L's, 2 L's, Quaaludes. I need to lose a few pounds. I need some black beauties. Okay, write the scripts and then go to the park. I mean, I have no money.
Yeah.
I had no money, but I only need to make $10 a day. Sell 2, I'm done.
That's
Sell them for $5. I only need $10
you
a
had a
day.
very
to live.
very small bottom line.
Well, I wasn't. I had no overhead.
Yeah. Yeah.
My rent was $75 a month. Making $10 a day, you're doing good.
And who were these guys? These old
Who
fucks
cares?
you sold to?
I hope they're dead.
Yeah. Were you
Couple
Well,
Sure,
helping
that was. I
tonight.
mean, first I'm selling pills, and then you got to up the ante.
to coke? What?
Oh,
No.
other
Come on,
stuff.
baby.
Well, what do you
You
sell
gotta,
after
put
pills?
you got to put a price on pussy because actually,
Oh,
it's
I thought
worth
we were
whatever
talking-
you can.
that
Whatever,
drug. You were
whatever you
switching
think
drugs
it is,
on me, yeah.
you can name the price when you're an independent contractor. And actually, one of my favorite non-tricks, if we want to go there,
Please.
I was sitting in the park trying to sell some black beauties. An old grandpa sidles up to me. Must have been, I don't know, because I was like under 20 and he must have been over 70, 80. But 70 in those days is not like 70 is now. It's like, it was like 100.
Nah, 70's still 70.
Not really. I mean, I'm almost 60 and honey, I don't feel it or look it, but that's just me, not you. So he sidles up to me and I'm like, yeah, tell him my luck. I'm having a hard time. I'm homeless. I wasn't. He said, oh, maybe I can get you a room over here at the George Washington Hotel.
Oh, I know that hotel.
Maybe you could. Yes, that would be very nice. He goes, I need a little company. I'm like, okay. So we go into the room. Grandpa barely can walk, and there's dust on the dresser, and the window faces a brick wall. And suddenly I feel him having a flashback.
Wow.
He is having a flashback
To
Nazi Germany. He's an old, crippled Jewish grandpa. And he's like, I can't do this. I just can't do it. I'm like, do what? I don't want to do it anyway. I'm like, I don't want you to think I want to do it. I'm like, oh, no. I'm like, that's okay. But I could see his flashback. And he's just like, I just can't do this. I can't do it. I'm like, oh, it's okay. You don't have to do anything. Why don't you just sit down? Just have a seat. He goes, I paid for 3 days. Just stay here. I turned some other tricks and thought very well of Grandpa. But I saw his flashback. Now, whether it was the brick wall or the dust on the dresser or the smell of the room or the inability for him to actually achieve what he only hoped he could have with such a young and tender, gloriously open, beautiful tenderloin like myself,
When you say you saw his flashback, do you mean you saw he was having one, or you could see the visions he was having?
I saw that he was
like
having
the barbed
one,
wire
and I
and the
felt
barracks and the
I saw
guards
that he was having one, and I could only feel a relation to that's what it must have been. Now, whether or not that was it doesn't
That's a
matter.
phenomenal story.
And I mean,
That's
and
choking
also,
on ghosts again. You're choking on his
well,
ghost.
and also, I was very compassionate.
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
I mean, and you know, I mean, I didn't have to do a lot of sex work in my day, but the sex work I did do, which I was the contractor for, I have to say, I always felt it was a service well rendered for the right amount of money that I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, and I'm not talking about exploitation. Nobody was exploiting me. I wasn't even exploiting myself. There are lonely men that want a bit of beauty and tenderness.
Sure.
I need money for rent. They need to be snuggled, cuddled, or whatever else. And I thought it was a very fair exchange because I thought it was a more honest relationship than most other relationships. Here is what I need, here is what you need. And we come together in this, and I never felt exploited by giving men who worked too hard and had wives that hated them a bit of beauty for a few minutes, a bit of tenderness for a few minutes. And I never felt exploited by their wants or their needs, but then I could choose who they were. And I didn't have to do that very often. But I never regretted doing it. And actually, some of my fondest olfactory sensations have to involve... I'm not even going into that right now.
Well, you can't just stop in the
This
middle.
is the
What?
Lydian Spin with Tim Dahl, and we're talking to Jerry Stahl. I can stop and go whenever I want, Jerry. Come on, baby. You know me.
Well, you had a lot of heart. I mean, that's,
I
an,
still
that's an
do.
incredible story. Yeah, you still do, but that's a very enlightened story.
I have a lot of... I mean, if you know me for 5 minutes, you know I have a lot of heart.
So you weren't like rifling through their wallet or
Oh,
doing
no,
any
no,
of
no.
shit?
That was the hot dudes. I would never pickpocket a trick. I would pickpocket, like, you know, I'd pick somebody up, and then I'm talking about that tonight, but I'd never pickpocket a trick because I wanted to come back.
Also, when guys think they're got one up on you and they're trying to outsmart
Oh.
you, that's when you kind of they fall for the trap of that.
Tim,
point.
did you do a lot of sex work?
I've done zero.
Really? Well, one of your yets.
Well, I'm way past the rent boy age.
Not
but-
to all of us, honey. I'm not so sure about
don't be
keep wearing
fishing
that
for
baseball
compliments,
hat.
young
Hey,
man.
keep wearing that baseball hat. Pass for
Yeah,
17
well,
in the right light.
Although I was approached when I was living with my dad in Chicago when I was 15.
Got him nervous. He was banging.
Oh
the
yeah, there we
table.
go.
Yeah.
I was 15. I had a summer job selling ice cream in the park.
Here we
and
go.
And this
God, I wish
Here
I
we
could
go.
have some of that where I
This-
counted.
this
I could have
creep-
Grandpa lick it off.
this creep kept on revisiting me, and then he started talking about his rent boy days. Like, oh God, this guy's like fishing or something. And he would tell me. He told me, he goes, oh, see, back in Chicago, there was a place called Yankee Doodles.
Ooh.
And you'd go there, and these guys would drive up in their Beamers or their Mercedes, and you'd get in. It's like $50 for a blowjob.
Hey,
Something like
and
that.
in those days, that was really a good, that wasn't a bad gig.
I knew he was dangerous when he had this really strange explanation about why his best friend's child was technically his,
Oh.
because he went on a camping trip with his best friend, and they decided to go beyond blowjobs. They decided to have anal sex, and then
I'm so glad I
and
asked.
and so then his best friend went home and slept with his wife that night, and then suddenly she was impregnated, and therefore it's his. I was like, whoa, this guy is
Boy, you are a
nuts.
natural-born storyteller,
This
my
guy was
friend.
nuts.
Wow.
So I was just kind of like, if summer ended, I never saw the guy again, but yeah. I was approached, but
You made sweet love, and then you just
no,
never.
I
you
avoided that
never
one.
Wrote.
Oh, I avoided that one, but then also on Friday nights, the vending where you had to drop off like the stuff was in this Mexican neighborhood.
The bending?
It was basically a cart.
Oh, vending.
Vending.
I'm sorry.
You had to
The ice
drop off.
cream vending
Yeah,
machine.
when you had, not the machine. It was like some stand. So they picked you up. You had to return the stuff, and it was a
Tim
Mexican
Dahl,
neighborhood.
ice cream seller.
Oh yeah, it was in a Mexican neighborhood, and I would leave, and then all these like Mexican guys who just got their paychecks would pull up, thinking, so it's this rough neighborhood.
Oh, we're looking for you.
So that summer, I was approached by. I think that's what I'm saying. It's 15 is maybe the rent boy age. I don't
Wow.
know.
For me, it is.
That's when I was approached a few times.
You missed your calling, Tim.
Oh well,
Jesus, I
Sometimes,
mean,
sometimes you
lost
can't do it
oppor-
all. You can't do it all.
Lost opportunities come and go. Not too late.
Oh well.
You might have to start selling ice cream again.
I don't know.
You know what, Mr. Softy and I, Mr. Softy.
Is that your nickname
actually,
for Tim, Mr.
No,
Softy?
absolutely not. Actually, I would never call a man Mr. Softy, even if he was. But I have to say that when I was in Greenpoint for a while, it seemed like every time I left the house, there was Mr. Softy. So much so that I had to call a friend. I think Mr. Softy is stalking me. Should I get in the truck?
Sure.
They're like, don't get in the truck. I'm like, why not?
So when you hear that little song, did you get all like aroused?
That should be made into a horror movie. The face painted on the ice cream cone.
Hey, the GPS killer, Mr. Softy, I'm down. But I have to say, if I would have gotten in the truck, he would have gotten out, then I would have been selling the ice cream. And I don't want to pull a Tim Doll.
Mr. Softy used to be able to buy drugs in the Mr. Softy trucks back in the day.
You know what? Mr. Softy always tastes the same way.
Does he?
He does.
Reconstituted that kind of grainy
sometimes
ice cream.
look, sometimes you just want, like, for me, I only can take like 2 licks, but sometimes I want 2 licks of a Mr. Softy. Why can't they sell mini? I don't understand why they don't sell mini sweets. Like, I want a cupcake that big, like the size of a quarter.
They sell
I want
little
2
cupcakes.
licks.
They sell little
Will they
mini
sell me
cakes.
2? Do you think Mr. Softy would give me 2 licks?
Like a micro cone?
And let it go? The mini cone.
You know what? You might have just stumbled on your fortune.
Look out. You might want to edit that one out because that's like about $1 million right there.
Right there.
right.
Mini
Patent pending.
Mr. Softy. Anyway.
The Lil Lydia.
There are no little Lydias, and you know my theory about that, Jerry. It doesn't fit in, it doesn't come out. Children, I mean. Or like the New York subway used to say, it's like being grounded for 18 years. You've been grounded time and time again. You've spewed out a few children.
How many kids do you have?
He doesn't know. Well, 2 to be exact.
Lydia is my spokesperson.
All right. Well,
You know,
I'll ask her how many kids
look,
you
Jerry, I
have.
volunteer every February to Tim Doll as well. February is, and it's coming up.
February? What happens in
Vasectomy
February?
month.
The what?
Vasectomy month, free vasectomy month. And I am willing to supply the service or pay for it even. I don't think anybody should breed, but you have 2 children.
I know two
What about-
guys who have had them, and contrary to popular belief, they said both pretty painful.
Oh.
Well, and also the
I'm
idea
not
of
looking
getting
for sympathy. I'm just saying, you know.
Oh, so painful.
I don't trust doctors enough
You
to
know
go in
what?
for
What about
volunteers.
just surgery unless it's utter, unless it's
I'm
just
with you, Tim.
necessary?
I'm with you. Yeah.
Have you had a lot of surgery?
I've had a few things removed here and there.
I've had a few surgeries, but this is one thing that does prevent childbirth, besides the fact I do not think there need to be any more people, especially no little
I don't
idiots.
disagree. Yeah.
I mean, the thought of first of all, the thought of carrying a living thing in my body for 9 months is disgusting. It's alien. I don't believe in it. I think it's physiologically wrong. To birth another human being into this planet is absolutely morally wrong. And then to shit out for 18 hours a watermelon, or I have seen the C-section on the Operation Channel, have your uterus lifted out of your body and the little demon cut out, who is probably going to grow up to fucking hate you, because did we not hate our parents? Oh, yes. Carry on.
Well, I would say the better
February
argument.
is vasectomy month. Free vasectomy month at my house, I'm just saying.
The better argument.
Does that mean you perform them yourself?
I can
Oh,
do
boy.
such. Excuse
Wow.
me. I can
I don't know
break
what-
out my
what-
ministerial card.
We're scared.
You should be. All right.
But the better argument, and this is the great one with the environmentalists.
Jerry did write a book called OG Dad about the process and the procedures as he was going through the birth of his last child.
Well, that was a particularly weird situation because I was getting treated for hepatitis C, the junkie's gift, which is what you get when you don't get AIDS. And therefore, any pregnant woman who touched me would have a child born with like a 3-day beard and antlers. So, you know.
But you impregnated someone, you extricated yourself from the situation,
It
and you had a
happens.
child that
It
was
happens.
born fully functional.
Knock on wood. I mean, who knows what could sprout tomorrow?
Any woman that is contemplating having a child, I'd like to
Call you
advise you.
first.
Well, I mean, advising you to read my article. Motherhood is not compulsory, and I also advise you to take
Where
out a
can they-
piece.
where can they
my
find
book
that
will
article?
work for drugs. I advise women to take out a piece of paper and a pen and write down exactly the pros and cons of having a child. Then please call me up so I can fist fuck you double for 18 hours to let you know what it feels like, and then I'd like to suck on your left hip for 3 years just to prove to you the beauty of childbirth. Not to mention the moral and philosophical repercussions of having the nerve to fucking breed on this planet. Now, I'm glad you had another child. I'm not so sure about that, Jerry. All right, this is the Lydian Spin with Tim Doll. We've been talking to Jerry Stahl. Thank you very much.